Welcome to the Blooming League of Original Podcasts.
G'day and welcome to a darkly urgent edition of Thrash and Treasure, the torture chamber musical comedy podcast that never stoops so low as to force classy theatre legends to listen to death metal music, except when we do, every week. And speaking of solo, guess what, Aaron? Oh, that's me. What, me? We have another legendary British diva in our stuffy old auction house today, so give in to those dark urges, cause things are about to get bolder and bolder as we kick open the gate on this fairy tale journey through 100 acres of wood with stage appearances in Winnie the Pooh, The Jungle Book, Beauty and the Beast, Wind in the Willows, then Sherwood Forest with Robin Hood and his merry band of outlaws and legends, before lurking around Mirkwood with Gollum in his video game, taking this riddle master from Middle Earth to touring across the middle of the earth on Mary Poppins's UK and international tour, plus a practically perfect plethora of precious projects like Project Brutus, Project Hampstead, and Project Victor. Please stop saying project, just help this Victorian project a huge Aussie g'day. Oh no, I forgot to write in a joke here. Sorry, oh my god.
Quick, make one up.
I cannot think that quickly. Oh my god, it's blank. To this proper British thespian who 40 years on from his today's chosen musical is still the dealer's choice as you like it on approval from my cousin Rachel, but 'tis a pity she's a whore. Wait, not a pity, that's the sound of music to my ears, and mamma mia, there's enough stage roles to make it rain, man. So before we reach the end of the affair, Sherlock your homes in this quiet little hamlet as we celebrate a single man who has birthed a breed of heroes and villains. Oh wait, and here comes the clowns with deadly performances in Murder in Green Meadows, Diagnosis Murder, The White House Farm Murders, Post-Mortem, Who Killed Agatha Christie, and Killing Me Softly. With so much blood in his hands, I can only imagine how big the bill for soap is. And luckily, this icon has scrubbed up for some of Britain's cleanest soaps, including Corrie, EastEnders, Holby City, Doctors Emmerdale, Hollyoaks, and more, as well as washing up on the shores of LA for some of Hollywood's most beloved shows, where he hit the streets of Beverly Hills 90210 and gate crashed a party of 5 with a bottle of whiskey Cavalier, plus a multiverse of genre shows where he slid into Sliders, Babylon 5, Baywatch Nights, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., plus his ill-fated fan favourite stint on the mega hit Charmed. So I'd sure be a prude if I didn't pipe up and feebly welcome to our conjure chambers this truly talented actor, singer, producer, and director who'll direct you through Baldur's Gate 3 times more as the voice of the superstar breakout character Dark Urge. So let's light the mood with Mr. Neil Roberts. Yay! Welcome to the torture chamber. How are you going?
That was brilliant. That was really brilliant. I have been told about your introductions, but I had no idea. That was staggeringly brilliant.
Thank you so much. And as I just said, you are a Shakespearean actor. Again, there's always a lot to live up to.
It was a long time ago. I'm going to record your introductions and use them wherever I go, even if I go shopping in Tesco's. Just, I think it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Awesome. So I was just talking about it with Caroline before, because she was asking about, is there any sort of rules in introductions? Because I know you do a real over the top one, and I'm like, well, that's psychological. That's to wear you guys down very much, so to relax you and have you laughing. So we go into the conversation. But yes.
I think it creates something rather fun, and it shows you've done a bit of research and stuff. And I think that's all positive and helps the actor relax and also think, oh yeah, this person has knows a little bit about my career, as opposed to what can happen where. So tell me about yourself.
That's it. For our listeners at home, you are the superstar breakout character, as I said, in Baldur's Gate 3, which admittedly I haven't played, but I've been watching YouTube videos. I have no idea what's going on, but you have had such a phenomenal career, and you have been popping up in other video games, including the brand new release, Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes.
Well done. I never know how to say it.
Apologize if I'm not saying it correctly.
It only came out yesterday. I wanted to find out, because the weird thing about games is you can only find your performance performance if you play it.
Yeah.
In TV and film, you can watch, you can fast forward, you can do whatever. So Baldur's Gate 3, I did mocap and voice for over 4 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then I saw on YouTube and various other places some of my dialogue and my voice, and my kids would send me links and stuff. And I had completely forgotten that I'd recorded that. So it always came to me as quite a surprise. So exactly the same with this. I decided to be on the front foot, and I Googled characters that I played in Ayurden. Now I don't know how to say. I say
Ayurden?
Chronicle 100 Heroes. So I actually saw or heard at least some, not all, some of my dialogue from that, because when you record it in a studio, if you're doing motion capture or you're just doing voice, you have no images. It's not like being on set where you're a part of it all. You're just using your imagination, trying to imagine, having been told what it's about and what it's like. You're then trying to set the scene in your head. So it's always extraordinary then to see the elements of the game. And sometimes you think, oh yeah, that's what I was picturing. And other times you're thinking, wow, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
When we did Charmed, it was very old, so the graphics and the CGI is possibly not what it is now. But even then, we were doing green screen and stuff and spending a lot of time. I don't know, there's an example where I had this power called astral projection, where I would go into some sort of trance and appear wherever I wanted. I remember being in Prue's bedroom. They were trying to find a tiara or something.
That's right, yep.
So how they filmed it was they did all of their bits and kept the camera locked on, and then I turned up and I pretended I was over their shoulder, told where they were moving, and I would move around, and then they purely superimposed the two together. It was very simple. But the fact that I had to try and say my lines and look to people who aren't actually there and looking over their shoulder, etc. I know that, is it Bob Hoskins, when he did Who Framed Roger Rabbit, spent months looking at nothing. And from my understanding, I'm not sure it was a breakdown, but there was something that happened afterwards where he found it really difficult, having spent so long talking to nothing and looking at nothing. So yes, so that's my little version of. I have no idea why I started that story, but
I was about Ayurden Chronicles, which that's the last time any of us are going to attempt to say that this episode, I promise.
Green screen. That was my experience of green screen.
And I did also watch your episodes of Charmed, and I think I do have at least one question about that coming up, because I was a queer kid when it was on originally, and I had lesbian friends, so we all watched it.
In Australia?
Yeah, in Australia.
Brilliant.
But I was also a huge Buffy fan, so admittedly it was like, we're trying to be like Buffy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's Aaron Spelling's version of Buffy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's beautiful. The fact that you have 3 really strong female characters, and particularly at a time when maybe that wasn't so sort of readily produced, I think is brilliant. And I know that since then, there's an awful lot of people who have been really attached to Charmed. And I'm sure part of it is because of those 3 ladies and what they gave to it, and the power that they had collectively as well. I think there's something really beautiful about that I think people latched onto.
Yeah. And it was just as camp as tits. It was as camp as tits, and it was wonderful. And even just reliving episodes, because I only watched your story arc, obviously, until your unceremonious death because you failed to kill the 3. Don't worry, you're not alone. You're not alone, so don't feel bad, because everyone tries to kill them, and everyone
fails.
One person succeeded to kill off, obviously, Prue, Shannon Doherty's character. But anyways, you have also made a huge splash as the Dark Urge, as I mentioned, so we'll dive into that character later. But for now, were you a Dungeons and Dragons nerd growing up?
No.
No? Or are you just saying that because I said nerd?
No, I think I'm very geeky. But I don't know why. It is not something that in fairness, I didn't have a huge amount of friends. I have ADHD, a late diagnosis, about 10 odd years ago. And I know that with that comes a lot of social anxiety and also a lot of challenges in relationships and friendships and stuff. So yeah, when I got the diagnosis, it's sort of a bit like a jigsaw puzzle that came together, making sense of one's life to a certain extent. But that, I don't know if that's part of it. But yeah, I didn't have particularly many friends when I was growing up. And so I never did play it. I'd always been intrigued by it. And in fact, as I said, I think it was summer 2019 that I got the role in Baldur's Gate 3. And I knew it was based on Dungeons and Dragons. And so that Christmas, we bought a starter set Dungeons and Dragons, played it with the family. And what I have learned since is ideally you need a dungeon master who understands it all, who can guide everyone. No one else needs to understand anything about D&D. Problem with us is none of us understood D&D. You sort of, you play Monopoly or whatever, you have rules, you read the rule book. So we're reading this sort of rule book. And we did it a couple of times and died within really quite quickly. It was frustrating. So actually what the plan is at the moment, there's a few of the cast members who are going to do a streamed in the same room real D&D with a dungeon master who knows what they're doing.
Yep.
With actors who, some of the actors are big gamers anyway, big D&D people, big gamers in all sorts of games. And there's a few of us who aren't. And so the plan is that we are going to be in the same room. We're going to play D&D. I would really love to understand, obviously a big fan of Stranger Things. And I know D&D has been big all the time, but I think that has exploded, I'm sure, within the consciousness of other people who weren't involved in it. And also the reception of Baldur's Gate. There's something about it that people have really latched onto that is quite beautiful. There's many things in the games where it's about relationships. It's not, just you shoot, go to the next person and then kill them. There's a lot of strategy, but there's a lot of building friendships and relationships and understanding all of that. There's also a lot of fluidity, gender fluidity and sexual fluidity and whatever within the characters. And I think that all of it wrapped together has had a big influence on people. And I have only played part of the game. I'm absolutely useless at it. So again, I am about to stream as the Dark Urge playing the game. And the reason I want to stream is because I did it on my own in my sitting room and I got quite confused and a bit lost and died constantly and didn't understand what I was supposed to do. So the beauty of streaming is I can get advice from people, immediate advice. And so I'm really excited about that. But part of it is I want to really understand how powerful D&D has been, but also how powerful Baldur's Gate 3 has been within. And I know it's a wonderfully animated, great story, etc., but there is genuinely something more than that. There's very few things that you do that seem to change so many people's lives beyond purely entertainment. And there's something about this that it genuinely has. Hundreds of thousands of people, possibly millions. It's not just playing a game for a couple of hours. It's actually changed their whole being and relationships. So I want to be a part of it and really understand the joy that everyone's having from it.
Yeah, you do say it quite often on Scruff dating profiles, not that they're really dating, but Scruff profiles, because they're like, I like gaming at the moment, Baldur's Gate 3. And every time I say it, I sort of had to giggle knowing that I had this interview coming up and I'm like, I can't use that to get myself a date, can I? No, I can't do that. Okay, but you mentioned Monopoly has rules. What are your house rules when you land on free parking? Do you get the money in the middle or not?
You get all the money that's collected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyone who says otherwise, I'm not playing with you anyways.
Well, there's no alternative answer to that.
But some people believe that money goes into the bank.
No.
I know.
That's the fun of it.
I know.
What's the point of landing on it otherwise?
I know. What making little children cry because you've just gotten $10,000 from the middle. That is just perfect way to play Monopoly. Anyways, I'm a horrible person.
No, there's two things. When I was little, I had, I think, some emotional issues. And when I lost and someone got the free parking, I would throw the board in the air and scatter everything.
I'd just cry.
I also remember playing Monopoly on my own against other people, and I would be everybody.
Yeah, me too.
I was about to say I play with myself, but I think that would be inappropriate.
Speaking of super nerds, we'll move on to the metal. Have you had any experience with metal, glam metal, heavy metal, new metal, thrash metal, or medieval metal, which is a thing?
I'm quite old, and my brothers had some bands, and they really enjoyed a combination of things like, I don't know if it's called soft rock, but they enjoyed things like glam rock, so Kiss, etc., very influenced by that sort of medium. But also they enjoyed heavy metal, and there were these posters around of Judas Priest and Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and Kiss, etc. And so all of my childhood is that period. And they also had a band. They had two bands, more on the glam rock side, but one of them was called Silver Wing.
Yeah.
Then they turned into a group called Pet Hate.
Pet Hate. That sounds like a punk band.
Yeah, it was. But Silverwing, they had a little introduction to it, and they had this dry ice on the stage, and they had this voice saying, "From the primeval swamps, the something or another rose, silver wing, 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 wing." And they go. Well, I joined a band because I was some years younger than my brothers, but one was a drummer, the other one was bass guitarist and sang. And so I joined a band as a bass guitarist. I could play one song. Let me think. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, what is that? I can't remember if it's Judas Priest. Anyway, I can't remember. But we used to meet every Saturday. It was the only song I could play, so we kept going over that. The guitarist, though, was quite good, and so wanted to play some other things. So in the end, he'd have his guitar. He would then come up to me and do a bass solo on my guitar. Anyway, I was useless. And we gave up.
Yeah.
And I had very long hair and a bit of a mullet.
Yeah.
Yes. And I used to do a lot of head banging.
I need to see these mullet photos. I need to see the mullet photos.
I'm not sure if I have any.
Ah.
It was in the dark ages when there were candlelight and you'd have to sit there for 5 minutes and while they take the photo.
Okay, so what over-the-top, ridiculously extravagant things would you put on your ultimate rock star rider? No water. That's a default. You get water already.
Well, it's the same thing as I ask for now.
Yep.
I don't know, I'm trying to think now. Earl Grey tea.
Yeah, it's not easy coming up with jokes on the spot, is it? Like trying to do those introductions and I'm in that zone and I'm in that speed as well. And then suddenly I find a blank space and my body went cold and I'm like, no, I cannot think of anything right now because it's always a say g'day and then another quote or something from someone's career. And I remember looking through trying to find the perfect quote that would be funny, but I just obviously didn't get to it in time and I had an extra 24 hours to do it in.
Well, you know what? The thing about riders, though, is I like the idea of having the power to be able to have the influence of having a rider.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I wouldn't want to be that pretentious. I wouldn't want to be thought of as that much of a knob. So I think there's either two things where you go in, your fridge is full of champagne and whatever. You go, oh my, that's a surprise. You say, no, it's in your rider. You say, oh, I'm so sorry, my agent, they're so precious. It's nothing to do with me.
Yep.
So there's either that or actually I don't want anything. I'm the sort of person I think would just go to M&S and bring me my Marks and Spencer's food bag and drink bag of goodies. So therefore I would be in control, one, of what there is, and two, of not being thought of as an arse.
But okay, we're in a world where no one is thought of as pretentious.
Where I can be an arse.
Yeah, it's perfectly normal. Because like the M&M's thing was a really smart move on their part because it showed them that the venue was doing their job properly and everyone was communicating.
Wow. So if they arrived and the M&Ms were not sorted out and color-coded, they wouldn't do the gig.
They wouldn't do the gig.
Because they would know that there was some
miscommunication going on.
Yeah. Wow. I like that. It depends on what the rider's for. Surely most people think of a rider as something really diva-ish, not for a purpose of that just to show I want the best champagne of, the most expensive, to prove how important I am, as opposed to what you're saying then, there's a real reason behind it. I think I've never heard of that story. There you go. That is, now I know. I'm going to text my agent immediately. Next time, color coordinated. So the trouble is I pick up my phone and I get distracted by the messages I've got. You know what I do quite like though? I quite like having a dehumidifier in the dressing room. When we did Mary Poppins, we were in Zurich, and I don't know if it was there was something about the theatre which was really dry, and it didn't make a lot of difference to my singing, but those of the people who could sing, they were having real problems. And so they got these, I'm trying to work out what it was, dehumidifiers or humidifiers to actually put some moisture back in the air in all the dressing rooms.
It'd be a humidifier.
Yeah, as opposed to dehumidifier. So they were trying to give humidity into the room so that you could wet your vocal cords. So in fairness, if I was a singer in a band and the front person, then I may request that because I think that's something practical that could help me. I don't think anything else is practical.
Yeah.
I'm very practical.
Oh, yeah.
I want things. I know what. No, but you see, I want things. No, but it's what you said about the audience. It's focus on the audience. So part of me would be, well, what do I want? I need to give the best I can. What will help me do that? Having a bottle of champagne or a big bottle of whiskey will not do that. It will dry out my throat, and then I'll get really paranoid if I've had a couple of drinks or even just a sip of one, and then I'll be paranoid about falling off the stage, being out of tune, etc. So I wouldn't want any of those things. I want practical things like ensuring that I'm hydrated, that there's enough moisture in the air.
Yeah. And puppies.
And I wouldn't ask for M&Ms because I'd be really concerned that some of the roadies and stuff might have a peanut allergy. So it's the last thing I would ask for. And you can't ask. And also, well, some of them, we got friends who have dairy allergies. And so we got a friend who had a bath in a bath bomb, and it had some milk in the bath bomb, and they ended up in hospital needing a what's-it injection. And so if that person is in my band, I couldn't have bath bombs, so I couldn't have any sort of milk or dairy. So my rider would be what is not allowed in the building. So nothing that anyone can have an allergy with. And maybe I would be pretentious and say, you need to clean every room so there's not dust getting into my throat for singing. I'm really getting involved in this now, aren't I?
Good. That's what I want.
On top of which, but it has to be a certain cleaning product, because otherwise I have allergies. And when I clean the house, I'm just pretending, but I'm not actually. But when I clean the house, I then keep coughing and cannot speak. I'm saying that obviously so I can avoid cleaning the house. But that would be no use if you're the front man of a band and they've used a certain product. And then, Johnny, my guitarist, who had a bath just before we went on stage and ends up in hospital because they're with a milk-based bath bomb. And then Doodar's in hospital on the drums because of the peanut allergy. And then I'll be there on the front, not being able to sing and not having a backing group.
And that's going to be posted to social media straight away, and you will be cancelled.
So there you go.
See, rockstar writers matter. We're going to move on. Because this week I picked Soundgarden's Louder Than Love. So I'm going to quickly rush through my review because I've written reviews for both of them.
See if I concur.
When I first picked Soundgarden, it was purely because it sounded like a place where salad might grow. So I pressed play on Spotify and was met with the ugly truth. This is grunge. So I accepted my fate and proceeded through the 45-second intro of this rather long opening number before the soaring, yearning vocals of the lead singer kicked in, and immediately he does sound familiar. So with hands all over the keyboard, I searched the band. Chris Cornell. Oh, I mean, I'm stupid, but I'm not a complete moron. 5 stars. Brilliant, poetic, dark, and often sleazy. Just please don't cancel me. Okay, I can't lie. Cancel me, if you will. Whilst there are plenty of moments of poetic brilliance enhanced by Cornell's vocals, I didn't have much patience to get through some of the more on-the-nose moments, especially when the musical accompaniment didn't expand or grow out of the flower pot. Something
I know I shouldn't be interrupting, but
go for it.
Does that mean you didn't listen to every song?
I did about 20 times.
Oh, right, because you just said that I did. I thought you were saying you didn't last through it.
Didn't have much patience to get through it.
Yeah, I thought therefore you didn't get through it.
No, I did because I
was then furious because I had to listen to the whole bloody thing. And I was thinking, wow, great. I listened to it and you didn't.
No, I did. Sort of, they were antsy moments of restlessness. So I found myself impatient, waiting for them to get through.
To do something.
Yeah, to do something that basically to stop being on the nose.
Have I listened to the same thing? You just said something about Flower Garden.
Soundgarden.
I listened to Mr. Bungle, California.
Oh, no. No, I changed it. Remember? I sent you an email.
I am absolutely... Well, I'm reviewing California, Mr. Bungle.
Okay.
There you go. And you review that. I shouldn't be so rude.
No. Because I swapped it over with Tony Sheldon because I thought Soundgarden went better with Salad Days.
Brilliant. I am not very good on my phone.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm not very good. No. I'm not very good at reading emails. Part of my ADHD, I also have dyslexia. And I have to get my partner, when I do a self-tape as an example, and it has reams of pages, not the scenes, but the pages of instructions that they now send. And they want it like this. Some of them say you need to introduce yourself, you give your height, your hat size, your whatever. Some of them don't need that information. Some of them want it at the start of the tape. Some want it at the end. Some of them want them each scene sort of separately. I have a real issue reading through all of that. So I now print it up, I hand it to my partner, and they now read it through and explain to me what I need to do. And much the same, I do remember reading an email that you said, we're changing this.
Yes.
The problem is, a few days later, I then went back to an email from you, presuming it was the new email, but it was the old email.
Yeah.
It's an issue I have on phones because, my eyesight's not what it was either. And so I can't see anyway, it is not I just want you to know, it's not your fault. You did say I've changed it, but I looked back at the wrong thing.
I just thought the jokes I could get out of working the two of them together, Soundgarden and Cellar Days, I knew I could do more with them. Whereas Seesaw and Mr. Bungle, they go together because a seesaw is the type of thing you have in a circus. So it was like just to set up my jokes, really. So I it's my fault because I changed them.
Don't let me ruin your don't let me ruin your jokes. You do your jokes anyway, and then I'll give you my review of Mr. Bungle, California.
Okay, well, I'll just finish off this then.
You do your bit, and then I'll go, I agree. I concur fully. There's nothing more I can add to your review.
I'm going to take it back a little bit because now I've forgotten where I was up to. I didn't have much patience to get through some of the more on-the-nose moments, especially when the musical accompaniment didn't expand or grow out of the flower pot. Something which no doubt bloomed in this much beloved band. Just please don't cancel me. I'm just not that into grudge, but I did enjoy the heavier metal moments more. 3 stars. But it's a pushing it for 3 stars. Like some of those songs, they really did kind of make me feel a bit antsy because either the lyrics were too on the nose or
yeah, I agree. Yes.
Or or you are an actor, so yeah, you can BS your way through this.
Well, you can now see if I'm any good or not.
Yeah, that's not my judgment to make. Yeah, so I only know Soundgarden. I think they do Black Hole Sun. I meant to look that up. Do you know that Black Hole Sun, won't you come? Is that them? Soundgarden. Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, for some reason though, Bumble and California keeps coming in their head. I don't know why, but no, I think your review is spot on. I think it's perfect, and there is really nothing I can add to it.
Because when I realized it was like that was legitimate, when I realized it was Chris Cornell, because he killed himself a couple of years ago and it was a whole thing like, or he died and then someone else, another rock star, killed himself because he lost Chris Cornell, who was his like best friend or his idol. So it was like a whole thing. I know how beloved this band is, but I didn't feel it.
I am now listening to Ugly Truth.
Oh, okay, you've got it? Yep.
Yeah. Now, Hands All Over. Yes. That's very different from what I was listening to before. Blimey. Yeah. Brilliant. I actually like that a lot. I hated the other thing.
Yeah. So if I put this out there as it is, then the audience would just be crying with laughter because it would just like this whole mess of a disaster. But then I can't do that to you, obviously, because
no, I think you should. No, I think you should, absolutely. I think this is the joy of, it's the authenticity. I like that music though. The other thing seemed to do 20 different sort of sounds in one song. It was bits of it I really liked, and there were elements that sounded a lot like theme tunes of TV shows. Whereas this, I like the fact that it has a thumping sound. What you now need to do is see if you can Google Het Hate and see if you can find anything of my brother's band.
Yeah, Silverwing was their other name.
Silverwing, yeah.
So that sounds like a glam metal band or a medieval metal band. Whereas
it's glam metal. It was quite amusing because Pet Hate songs, Girls Grow Up Too Fast, Roll Away the Stone, I wonder if this, of course, it may not be the same Pet Hate. 1984, it could easily be. Apple Music. Wow, I didn't know that. Pet Hate is a British heavy metal band who released 2 albums in the 1980s titled Bad Publicity and The Bride Wore Red. They took their name from the idea of a pet peeve. The members consisted of David Roberts and Stephen Roberts, my brothers. Alistair Terry, this is a wiki page. I had no idea. They're on Apple Music. Street Fighting Man. However,
they're on Spotify. They are on Spotify.
Brilliant. I did a speech. I don't know if Silverwing will be. Silverwing were much earlier. They were actually, you know what? I've forgotten who the journalist is with NME. He was a huge fan. And I think they were on the front page of NME in one issue. James Barton, I don't know. Something Barton, one of the main reviewers there. And absolutely loved my brother. brother's band. Thought they would be huge. And it's just it's much the same as acting, it seems, that you can get people like that who know a lot about music, who think this could be extraordinary and the next big thing. But I don't know, a couple of A&R people that don't quite get it, you're not in the right place, all of those various things. And so however successful they were, it didn't quite reach the heights that they really hoped, and potentially that they should have done too.
Wow. There's a Silverwing. Did they release a song called Midnight? They've got a logo which looks like it could be a heavy metal band or a glam metal band, and 4 monthly listeners.
I don't know. I've got songs on the right of this. Oh, a picture of my brothers, in fact. It is on YouTube Music, Apple Music. They did songs titled Rock and Roll, the Four-Letter Words, Flash Bomb Fever. They're actually quite influenced by the Sweet as well, which is why it is more British sort of. The Sweet, I always felt, were a British version of Kiss. But I did a speech. I was a best man to one of my brothers, and he went to university and did English and got a degree and whatever. And he utilised it by writing songs which are called Rock and Roll, our Four-Letter Words. So we had a laugh at his. That was what he did with his English degree.
Yeah, David Zippel had a law degree and then wrote Disney song.
Brilliant, exactly.
Much love to David Zippel. I wasn't saying that as sass. I was saying that as like a good thing. Like it's where a career leads to. I wasn't at all. David, please come back on my show for a third time. Oh my God, I was not insulting you.
And all they did was huge Disney songs. Isn't that appalling?
I know, like Reflection from Mulan, like one of the biggest Disney songs ever. Like I was not at all sassing. It was to say like it doesn't matter what degree you come from. Like a songwriter is a songwriter. Oh my God.
Here you go. There is a website called spiritofmetal.com and they've got Silverwing on there.
Oh wow, okay.
And what they've also got is the logo that's on that was they created for they had this banner behind the stage, and also they had it on their album. And my dad, who was an artist and then an art teacher, created and drew. I remember, this is many, many, many decades ago. I can picture him drawing this logo for my brothers. So I don't know if you can see that. It's on spiritofmetal.com, silver wing.
Is it a blue logo?
No, it is sort of the silver. No, it's white. Looks like iron girders with red around it.
We actually did the Sweet last week.
Now the Sweet were my favorite band.
Yeah,
and the Sweet also, the first record I had of a pop group was in fact the Sweet, and I think it was Wig Wham Bam or something it was called, and on the B side was something about Johnny, I can't remember. Anyway, I spent an hour listening to California Mr. Flippin' Bubble.
It was just a slight miscommunication. That's all it was. See why you have a rock star writer, Neil.
Yeah, quite. I should have sent you one.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not. I can't even pay my guests. There's no way I can make their demands. So what we had
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. When I invited her on, though, her assistant sent me a whole bunch of questions, like 7 questions. Will she be paid? Can you do it in 20 minutes or half an hour? And I'm like, no. I understand if she doesn't want to do it, that's completely fine. But I'm like, Booch, I'm doing this from my bedroom of all places. Like we don't have a budget, you know? And she still said yes.
Oh,
she said yes.
Sometimes I heard something on the radio this morning, which is talking about comics and some big agencies where they say, yes, you can have Bob if you have our new client, Jane.
Yes.
And they were saying that in fairness, it seems a bit unfair. It's lovely for Jane, but in fairness, Bob has no idea that the agent is using this in this way. And so I think half the time with these things, the actual person you want to talk to is probably extraordinarily reasonable and is quite happy to do whatever. And it's some sort of gatekeeper who potentially, I think sometimes a lot of it is either I want this information, which is fine, so then we can make an informed decision, not you have to do this. But alternatively, sometimes sometimes, I think you do have to be looked after, because there are some people who might take the piss, who actually might. You want to have some control in it, because invariably this sort of thing, there is no control ultimately. So you do what you can, and the job of the agent, etc., or the gatekeeper, is to try and control it as much as they can. And then once everyone has the information, you can then go and do it. In the chat, I sent you the link.
Yep, I've already got it up. I'm having a look at it now.
So you can see that silver wing logo.
Yep, from Macclesfield.
Yes, Macclesfield. Made by my daddy.
Oh, wow. Alive and kicking. 2 years before I was alive and kicking. I'm going to have a listen to them as Pet Hate as well, because they're on there. Just fun facts about Soundgarden. They did the theme for the Avengers Assemble, not the British Avengers. Wow. So not Emma Peel. Is it Emma Peel or is it Emma Steele?
Emma Peel.
Emma Peel. And who was the other one? The man. Oh, I can't remember. I just remember it was a terrible movie with Sean Connery. And Kirk Hammett from Metallica was inspired to write Enter Sandman, according to an interview he did with Rolling Stone.
Emma Peel and John Steed.
Okay, so there was a Steed, not a Steel. Anyways, well, it looks like we have a safe and sound garden, so let us plant some seeds ready for our salad days. That was the reason why I chose this album, Neil, because I knew I could make that dumb joke.
It was worth it.
It was worth it anyways. I've thrown my sheet, hang on.
When your excitement or your fury.
I know, tell me about it. From the producers of Thrash and Treasure, Around the World in 80 Plays, starring the adorable Lizzie B and Alfie Parker, and featuring the star of the show, Dolly the dog, they'll take you for a trip around the UK, exploring the rich arts and cultural history, but here is a sneak peek.
Long time no see. Welcome back to the second leg of Around the World in 80 Plays. I'm Alfie Parker, and that's
Lizzie B.
And we're joined as always by our four-legged friend, Dolly the dog.
Woof woof.
After a 2-month break from brand new episodes, we've boarded the bus for Bradford on the 8th stop of the Sister Act UK and Ireland tour.
Lots of Bradford love.
Lots of Bradford loving. Now, moving on to the tour. This week we've been performing in the Alhambra, as I said, and I believe this is Lizzie's moment to shine, to give us an insight.
Are you going to yawn all the way through it this week?
Yeah, last episode I was yawning a lot. This week, I don't think I'll yawn.
Are you going to interrupt me throughout?
Oh, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe.
Let's see how it goes.
If anything really shocks me and I'm like, whoa, then maybe I'll exclaim.
Oh, I can't wait. Right, so, as Alfie said, we are at the Bradford Alhambra Theatre, and I personally think this is one of the nicest theatres in the UK, which always makes it worth going to Bradford. I'm having a lovely time.
Yeah, that's nice.
But I've had quite a cold experience there before, because I've always stayed in hotels, like just bog standard hotels. As you said, walked 30 seconds to work, walked home. So I haven't gone out or done anything like that. But this time I'm having a totally different experience. But talking of the theatre, basically my point was the theatre is so nice. So here's my information taken from good old Wikipedia.
Here we go.
The theatre was built in 1913.
Ooh.
And it was built by the architects Chadwick and Watson of Leeds.
Not to be mistaken with Sherlock Holmes and Watson.
Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes.
This is going to lead on to another thing which Alfie always takes a mick out of me for, because everyone says Sherlock Holmes, but it's got an L in it. So I think it should be Sherlock Holmes.
No, you think it should be Sherlock Holmes.
That's not what I say.
That is what you say?
I say Holmes.
No, you say Holmes. Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes. Lizzie says Sherlock Holmes.
I don't. I say Sherlock Holmes. I hate you so much.
Well,
oh dear.
Yeah, well, there you are.
Word in. I actually say it right.
Lizzie's totally right. But it's a silent... Yeah, it's a silent L.
So it's not Holmes, it's Holmes.
It's a silent L, isn't it?
No. It's not silent.
Might be. Sherlock Holmes.
Moving swiftly on. It was opened by theatre impresario Francis Laidler. And before you ask,
Good one. Right, sorry, carry on.
I actually don't even know why I bother.
No, I'm
Are you
enjoying
taking
it.
any of this in? Who was it opened by?
Francis Laidler.
Right, before you've asked, I haven't researched him any further, but if anyone would like to.
Yeah, who is he then?
A theatre impresario.
They said that about me. Theatre extraordinaire.
Shout out to Jeremy Seckham, my OG theatre extraordinaire. If anyone knows how you become a theatre extraordinaire, please let us know.
I think I'm on track. I think I could.
Of course you are, dear. Right, more facts for you. The large domed turrets are iconic in the Bradford skyline, and they actually are.
Yeah, they are.
So
Fair play.
it's got 1,400 seats.
Is that it?
Oh, sorry.
No, it sucks because it feels so much bigger.
That's what she said.
Yeah, there we are. It does seem a lot big. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
You do. Oh, right, 1,400 seats.
Start by the Bradford Alhambra.
Call me the Alhambra.
Here's a cool fact. It was the main location, like the set on the film The Dresser, 1903.
They remake that.
Yeah, no, it was a play. It's been a play recently, but the film with what's he called? Mooney, Alfred Mooney. Is that his name? Daddy Warbuck.
Oh, I don't know.
Do a quick Google. Talk amongst yourselves.
Frederick Mooney. Alfred.
Albert Mooney. Albert Mooney. That's him, isn't it?
Which street, which house, or where I was before, where I was before.
Anyways, we're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, and that's the charming Neil Roberts from the cult favorite Charmed. Now, I do have a question about this. When was the last time you saw it? Because I watched it recently. And there is a scene that shows the real Rex Buckland and Hannah Webster as well.
Yeah.
Right. And it shows their ID on the police computer and it shows their age. And it shows Hannah is 22, very clearly, 21, 22, and Rex is 24. Now, yourself and Lee Allen, I believe her name was, you guys looked 22 and 24, but the people in the photos were very clearly not younger than me at 39. They were definitely older because that man was not 24. He was not 24.
Well, because I've been doing a few interviews since Baldur's Gate came out, I re-looked at some stuff at Charm, just reading up on some things. And there's an awful lot of, I don't know about Twitter, but on social media, there is a lot about those IDs, about the faces, the age. And in fairness, majority of it, I know why. I also did House of Halliwell. I did a podcast with Holly and Drew and Brian. This is 2 or 3 years ago. That's actually why. I re-looked at some of it so that because they were doing a podcast on each episode. So I think I did episode 10, which is where I finally died. And so I looked into it and I did see that there was a lot of confusion by that. And I don't know whether it's the sort of the people making it all up thought, well, it's only going to be on for a couple of seconds. It doesn't really matter. I generally don't know with those things how much thought behind it there is. Whether it's a genuine mistake, whether no one particularly cared, whether there's a reason for it that no one knows. Because you look at the behind the scenes of movies, Harry Potter, whatever, and they spend 30 grand on some broomstick and it has all this detail. I think there's a book, I think it was in Harry Potter, I can't remember, there's a book in something. And the art department spent weeks, if not months, on every single page of this book of being true to what what it should be if it were real. And it's in the shot for a brief moment. And as opposed to just saying, look, you don't need to do it. All we need are these 2 pages. They spent time, effort, creativity, and money on doing that just in case they flicked open the page and it was seen, etc. And the speed at which Charmed was shot was extraordinary. And they actually elongated it after I left. So I can't remember if it was shot in 6 or 7 days. And then the next, you'd have the Saturday and Sunday off. But there are a few things because of this green screen and what I said before, an awful lot of scenes it had to do twice, if not more, because they were laying it all on top of each other and doing their CGI equivalent. And the three of them were in 90% of the show and the scenes. And they were absolutely shattered by the end of the week. They had, because of that focus, and then because it hadn't quite aired, and they were doing a load of publicity. I think we were filming it for maybe 3 or 4 months, and then it started airing, getting quite popular. But we filmed it in LA, and so there's this thing with Screen Actors Guild where you have a certain amount of hours before you can be called in the next day. So they'd overrun on the Monday, overrun on the Tuesday to Wednesday, etc. But it meant that, well, you couldn't be called then on the Friday to Friday lunchtime, but you would be filming till 2 or 3 in the morning on the Saturday morning. And although you have the Saturday, Sunday off, on the Monday they'd be in at 5 o'clock in the morning. However, during that period, over the 2 days off, they would then fly to New York across the country to meet Jane Leno or whatever it is and do some New York-based chat show. And then they'd fly back, and then a Monday morning they'd be on set again. And so they added an extra day to filming. So if you imagine, I can't remember, as I said, we're going to 7 instead of 6 or 8 instead of 7. But it's a lot of time that then they added to it. But because these things are back to back, the producers came up to me and said, Neil, we're killing you off, I'm afraid. They said, a lot of pilots, you write a show, you hope for the best. But in fairness, the percentage of pilots that are then turned into a series is teeny tiny. So although they had this great idea, they didn't have then 20 episodes of material. And so they were saying, all of a sudden you're not greenlit till something like July. You start filming in August. We then have 7 days to film each episode, 20 episodes or 22 episodes in those days, in a season, without sort of time off, except a couple of weeks off over Christmas. And they're really chasing their tails. So a lot of the time I talk through things. And so having explained all of this to you, I have a feeling, on a Monday, or Wednesday, whatever day it is, they come out with this script, art department, the diddly-dee, absolutely everyone goes, all right, so we have to create these identities of Hannah and Rex. Oh, what should we do? Or even that morning, they could easily, they said, oh, you actually want to show that? Oh, God. Right, but let's put this on the screen. Yeah, well, that's me, but I need to change photo. Let's get Bob from sound. We'll put his photo in, and it's my ID, and yeah, fine. Yeah, ready to film. It could genuinely be that panicky. So yes, I agree with you. There's a lot of chatter I saw about this. I could well be talking out my arse. It may all be, I'm sure with everything, it's very professional, and they chose all of those things on purpose. And the majority of the audience just haven't worked out what the purpose was.
Yeah. For a giggle, I think, because I did get a good giggle out of it. Now, I just want to throw in there that I think the West End has missed out, or shouldn't miss out, on the opportunity to do Chicago with yourself as Billy Flynn, Diane as Velma, Caroline
Sheen
as Roxy,
yeah,
and Michael as Amos.
Mr. Cellophane, is that?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
The 4 of you. 5%, please, because is that not the greatest cast for Chicago ever?
I saw David Hasselhoff do it, actually, in the West End. And I went to see him afterwards. We had a little chat. And it was before, I think, he had started doing America Got Talent, which sort of sent him in the huge again. But I like David, actually, enormously. But I agree with you. We're friends with a few producers. I might show them this section of the podcast, just subliminally, to put some ideas in their head.
Yeah.
In a year's time, we could easily be at the Savoy Theatre doing Chicago. The alternative, of course, is we'll be in the end of the pier, the 4 of us, in a pared down version, a 4-hander of Chicago, in front of 3 people.
Yeah, that's it. That's pretty much what the show is, though. It's like,
I went to see Diane in Wizard of Oz of the summer at the Palladium with the family, and I thought, well, we'll go down the red carpet. So we started, and we were berated and shouted at and pushed out of the way, and we were stuck behind the gate, so we had to wobble through the gate.
oh no.
And now I was embarrassed. Not that I didn't care. I'd be quite willing to do that, but I had our children thus, and I was just embarrassed because I thought they'd be looking at me going, oh, Dad, you have no power whatsoever. You are pathetic. That's me going, oh no.
Oh, goodness me. But anyways, we're going to move on because we've been chatting so much. We're running way over time. We're going to move on to the musical, to Salad Days. which is what you picked this week, I believe, or Diane picked it.
Yes, sort of. It was suggested, and there is a reason. If anyone listens to this, I haven't chosen it because it's my favorite musical or because I approve of any of it. It is purely, we have a very, very big attachment to it in our household.
Oh, okay. Well, I wish I knew that before I wrote my review. I'm sorry. Anyways, when I was first given Salad Days, it made me feel old. So I pressed play, and the opening number instantly highlighted one issue I have with musicals. Not every cast member needs to sing every line in an exposition song. As the second track began, the lyrics became clearer as the two young tomatoes sing a cheerful song about not looking back. And they're cheerful. They mustn't have had my childhood. Anyways, the show continues with the cheery boardwalk piano hall music, which admittedly is made up of highly old-fashioned melodies, which granted is not a bad thing, but I do feel the tiny two-person backing the lively songs feels a little bit anemic, as many shows do, but also many don't. But here the music is catchy, so after hundreds of productions done this way, it does feel a little more outdated than some. The story is sweet, if silly, though I can only vaguely keep up. And somewhere there's a flying saucer as things turn so wacky with a magical piano that makes everyone dance. I'm reminded of my tiny violin, which makes everyone feel condescended, but also proves my point that this cheery optimism is bigger than its tiny band. But I can only judge by listening. Where today we have jukebox musicals that have this same light-hearted effect, here is a much-beloved show with longevity that has maybe been unable to compete where other classics have succeeded. And I can only imagine that's in the orchestrations, which worked when there wasn't a ton of meteor shows with tiny bands, like falsettos. So 3.5 stars. So I thought it was cute and it was sweet.
Did your heavy metal one only get 3 stars?
Yes. So I did like this a
Wow.
little bit more because I thought the songs were a little bit more enjoyable in this. And that's why I
Yeah.
wanted more orchestrations from them, because I felt like there's clearly a few characters and there's a company of, at least, I don't know, 10. I couldn't tell how many people on the stage. So it's not a small show.
Well, no, but you were listening to a particular rendition that was done at, is it?
Riverside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure how, I mean, first of all, it was done in 1954, I think.
And that was the same.
Oh, you're saying that even then it was purely a small band?
Yeah.
Because I wondered if it was the recording we were listening to. But I think you are probably right. Sorry, finish your review and then I will explain my... Right, well, I should just say, yes, I concur.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree with you. So there are 3 things. My first professional job, having left the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, was the musical Salad Days. And I played one of those tomatoes, Timothy. And in the olden days, you had to get a job to be able to be part of the union Equity. But you couldn't join the union unless you had a job. It's this catch-22 thing.
Yeah, I'd still like that, I think.
And so it was really special to immediately, in fact, I left before the end of the course. I was given that opportunity. And so there's a few things. One, it obviously, my first professional job, there is something quite romantic and rose-tinted glasses that means something to me about that. There is a simplicity to it. It was written in the 50s. And we had, I think there was certainly a pianist and a drummer, and maybe a couple of other things, but it was very limited. But I wasn't sure if that was just our production or whether that's what it's always been. From my understanding, it was their remedy to the hard-nosed American musicals of the time that were coming over. And it was the longest running West End show until My Fair Lady came out. And so it was hugely popular at the time, but it is of a time. And it also is absolutely bonkers. Now, the other thing, the reason I wanted us to discuss this is because, as I said, I went to the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, and there is a theatre in Bristol. And this was created for the theatre company there. It was such a huge success that it then went into the West End. £7,000 from that production, from the earnings, which at the time, obviously in the 50s, is huge, was given by Julian Slade, who wrote the lyrics and some of the music. And And they gave the Bristol Theatre School the £7,000, and the school at that time was run sort of around the almost in the backstage of the Bristol Old Theatre. And they managed to buy, with this money, this huge building, these old Victorian building in Bristol, which is, I think is still there, but that's where I trained for 3 years. And it was all as a result of the funds from the original Salad Days, of which my then first job was Salad Days. And my partner, who you know, is not particularly knowledgeable about Salad Days. However, we have a piano. And whenever anyone in the house mentions the word piano, there is a song, piano, yes, a piano, just any old piano, the one that makes you dance. Whenever anyone says the word piano, for some reason, my little head goes back to that song. I then have no choice but to blurt out, piano, yes, piano. And then I do the whole of that little routine. And so Diane, over the last few years of us being together, has heard this. And so as soon as you said, what musical, she didn't know that the funds of it actually paid for the Bristol Old Vic Theatre. She knew that I'd done it, and she knew that I irritated her enormously by singing the song from it. So I re-listened to it myself the last few days. And there are some tunes that I think are absolutely beautiful. And as you said, I think the word you used were catchy. There is something really catchy about some of those tunes. There's also something terribly simplistic and almost review-like from that period. And again, I don't know if that's part of this consciousness against the American musical that was coming in with, and I'm not sure what was around at that time. I suppose it was Rodgers and Hammerstein, would it be?
54 was the Pajama Game. I think Guys and Dolls.
But there's, I wonder whether they're much bigger. And although you're saying, well, what I thought was lacking was the bigger, fuller sound of the orchestration, which is what you get nowadays. There's something quite, I think, joyous about the simplicity of it. However, the story is absolutely mad. This piano makes them dance. Then at some point they go into a spaceship. I think there is a song about them being in Egypt or something, and Cleopatra and the sand. And I was listening to that and thinking, oh gosh, is this, I don't even remember these songs. Is this inappropriate? Is this really genuinely of an age? Because there's an awful lot of musicals that you just think, what is being covered here, just inappropriate. But when you said you were confused by it, it didn't have the book. It's at a time where there's an awful lot of book in between those songs. And whether the whole thing made sense, even then, I have no idea. But the songs on their own, even with my memory, made no sense. And so but also what I do like, it was from a period where often songs it did go on a journey, it told a story, and they would, the parents turn up and they are saying, this is the world, these are the things, these are these kids. But anyway, yes, I had a fun time. I giggled a lot during it. I remember one of the actors saying, my friends were in last night and they saw you laughing on the stage. You need to be more professional now. And I am a bit of a giggler. I have a focus of a gnat at the best of times, as you've seen during this course of this chat. But I was particularly naughty during that. Naughty as in maybe not as focused as I could be on the stage. And I don't know if that was because of the material, because it was so daft. Even then, I mean, we're talking about late 80s when I did this. So bringing it back now, I think. And the other thing about that recording is I don't remember it being also terribly plummy. There's a sort of style to the singing, which it jarred.
Very British term there, Neil. Very British. I've never heard that term in my life.
Plummy? Oh, really?
No.
It's when it's all terribly like that. And but even the singing was and I found it quite frustrating and annoying, that style. And I remember one thing, there was a review for me saying Neil Roberts, who looked and sounded like Cliff Richard. And so I don't know how I was singing, because that certainly wasn't what you listened to the other day, was it? I mean, that wasn't like Cliff Richard. So there's a lovely innocence to it. But I did think the rendition we heard, I would have liked it to be a bit vocally freer. And not so plummy. You've learnt a new word.
I have. That blows my mind. I
know you've been around so much and you've never heard the word plummy.
Never heard the word plummy. I'm sure there's plenty of Australian terms you've never heard of, but that's because they're not for home and away neighbours. Really, but
Ah, there you go. Comparative plummier, superlative plummiest, adjective. If you say that someone has a plummy voice or accent, you mean that they sound very upper class.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh, wow.
Collins Dictionary.
We're educating the children, including me. Well, okay, well, salad days comes from the Shakespeare term, obviously.
Obviously, I didn't know that.
Didn't you? I thought it was common knowledge. I wrote that down without even having known it. Like, I mean, without even looking it up. Because
Without having
I knew
even
it.
known it. That's
Yeah, that
extraordinary.
was a slip of the tongue. Without even looking it up, I already knew it. Sorry. I'm thrown off by Plummy. Like, goodness gracious me, how have I never heard that? Yeah, that was really all the fun facts that I had, was that it came from Shakespeare, because I knew obviously that you would have a lot to say about it. So
Well, there you go. I hope that you now realise why it wasn't necessarily the quality, it was the reasons for choosing it. But as I said, it was a huge success at the time.
yeah.
And there are many, many shows that just don't work decades later. Whether that one does, I don't know if it's ever done anymore. I know when I did it in the late 80s, it was a regular sort of thing that theatres, when we had repertory theatre in Britain, we don't have it so much now. Most of it's touring theatres that goes to the, but when we had repertory theatres where they would have their own company, rehearse for 3-4 weeks, put it on for 3-4 weeks in that particular venue, that show was done a lot. I imagine it is because it's not a huge cast and it is certainly not a huge orchestra, and that probably appealed to the finances of many regional theatres.
Yeah, but it does feel like a bigger show. Like,
well, we had a spaceship.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's a spaceship, there's a whole magical piano, there's a whole crowd of people singing exposition, which I could not. That's the thing. Not every song, when you have an ensemble people, you don't have to have them singing every line of every song. Have one person sing a line and then the next person sing a line, so that people like me can keep up and actually hear, because I feel like it gets a bit murky.
If only Julian Slade heeded your advice.
I know, if I was only alive, 31 years before I was actually born, but it's like an orchestra. The orchestra doesn't play every note of every moment. They come in, the violins will come in, and then like the timpani drums, whatever they're called, and then the triangles will ting a little bit. They add the flavors to it. I feel like musicals do this all the time, where the whole ensemble sings the exposition, and I don't think it's necessarily a good thing, because I didn't know it was a graduation until 10 listens in.
So I agree with that, and there are two things that get me, both on when you're listening to a recording, but in the theatre. I presume it's just my age or something, but I really have a problem sometimes hearing the definitive lyrics when when we did Mary Poppins. The musical director was really, really keen on the importance of everyone singing and cutting off exactly at the same time, because therefore, if it's a bit muddy, you don't hear the apart from the fact it may be prettier if it's all clean, but you don't hear the lyrics. And there's an awful lot of these things where, as you said, if you don't hear those lyrics, you are on doing catch up, and therefore you don't focus on the next few minutes of the scene because you're trying to work out what the fuck is going on.
Exactly.
And so I completely agree with you. Oh, there's one other thing. Monty Python did a parody.
Yes, they did too.
Of the musical. I've never seen it. I haven't Googled it. I don't know.
It wasn't like somebody like Julius Caesar's Cellar Days or something like that. It was like someone, like it was a send up of two things, the musical and someone else, I vaguely remember.
It says here, Monty Python in their sketch, Cultural Impact, Sam Peckinpah's Salad Days.
What did I say, Julius Caesar?
It was the sketch, 7th episode of the 3rd series of Monty Python's Flying Circus. There you go.
That's right. I meant to look that up. Anyways, it looks like the salad has gone rotten, so we better seize a chance for an ad break. G'day listeners, Aaron here. While you're topping up your coffees, did you know that you can support our show and go on a fantastically scary adventure at the same time? Go to www.thetonistantales.com/bookstore to grab your copy of The Toniston Tales, a darkly funny Aussie trilogy about a young boy who rescues injured animals in his spare time and the roller coaster ride he's taken on by a literal fish out of water. Written by me, the village idiot of Thrash and Treasure, you'll come to love Toniston Turnbull and the dozens of wacky characters that he meets along the way. And here is a sneak peek. Landing with a thud that echoes throughout the whole cottage, Toniston instantly rips off the manky shoes gifted to him by Milfred and tosses them into the corner behind a blue barrel. Without a second thought, the bully races down the hallway to the backmost room of the house and leaps behind his uncomfortable makeshift hay bed, then waits, and waits, and then waits some more, until finally, what seems like an eternity later, muffled growls start vibrating through the thin walls of Cubpaw's cottage. He tries to control his breathing, but his heart is racing way too fast. Toniston ducks down further. Nothing should be able to see him, but he can't be sure they won't smell him. The gruff growling grows louder. Toniston presses his ear against the cold, chipped, chalky wall. He thinks he can make out phrases like, "Where is it?" and "Give us the merge," though not much else. It's all too mumbled, and he's shaking too much. But it doesn't matter anymore. The front door of the cottage slams open with a harder, louder cracking thud than it ever had before. A dozen or so stomping footsteps enter. The cottage shakes uncontrollably as if it is as terrified as our friend the bully is. Toniston panics. He's trapped in a corner with a slew of sharks on his trail. He makes a sudden rash decision. Ripping aside the thick animal hide curtain, Toniston leaps through the small oval-shaped window head first, landing on a crate filled with hay sitting outside it. Mustering every ounce of manliness he has not to react verbally as he lands with a crunch on the sharp, pin-like hay. It pierces his skin in several places, but thankfully, in his panicked state, the bully becomes numb to the pain. Counting his blessings but not his chickens, Toniston struggles out of the crate by throwing his legs over and levering himself up, causing the coral underneath his feet to snap. He loses balance and tumbles. To describe the pain of tumbling face first down a steep hill of hard, sharp, deadly-shaped coral would require far too many swear words than this author would be allowed to publish, so let's just say it hurt. A lot. With one last somersault, Toniston's legs fly first over the cliff's edge. Crunch. His left hand grabs hold of the outmost jagged knob of coral. The stocky body of the 10-year-old child sways rapidly back and forth like some sort of death-defying pendulum. He gasps for air, or from shock, not even Toniston can tell. All he knows is above him a deadly coral cliff and deadlier sharks. Below him, larger, sharper coral under a sea of giant, sharp spikes of natural metal. His head throbbing and vision too blurred with bright red splotches to be able to see clearly for too long. His face is dripping with blood. It runs down his shirt front, tickling him in the process. But all he can do is swing there. It's moments like these that a boy really needs his mum. Unfortunately, while Toniston's life hangs in the balance, on Earth his life was, dishonestly, being celebrated by all at Gumbaya Primary School after news of the bully's disappearance had spread like wildfire through the tiny town, then onto the music industry before eventually reaching the wider world. Rock music fans, specifically those of Muzzletop, had flocked to the outskirts of Melbourne, leaving wreaths, band posters, and hand-drawn tributes to honour the missing son of their favourite singer. Although none of them knew the boy, many had seen him standing on the side of the stage of the band's concerts alongside Tina. Also, at the time of his disappearance, hundreds of the world's entertainment media lined the streets outside the school and, sadly, outside Tina's house. Wanting any word they could get their greasy hands on, the gossip came in thick and fast as snide, bored neighbours took it upon themselves to speculate and make up stories for their 5 minutes of fame. Inside the house, the phone ringing 10, 15 times a day from nosy TV stations, hounding the poor, terrified mother, there was no escape. And whilst Tina was never polite in her declination, still they persisted. "Call me again and I'll punch you in the nose," she promised. The school's principal, Mr. Patterson, had himself realised how cold and nasty it would look if Toniston Turnbull's former victims didn't at least pretend to mourn his disappearance. And thus, with an added paranoia of becoming a suspect, Mr. Patterson set out to overcompensate with memorials and dedications to the boy who touched all our lives with his love of animals. Mr. Patterson felt satisfied his school's image was intact. The largest memorial from the school came in the form of a service in the gymnasium. With every student, teacher, news reporter, and local police in attendance, Mr. Patterson sought to show the world just how much Toniston had meant to the school. The service would have made the bully puke. From the awful school choir butchering his least favourite songs, to the obnoxious releasing of the White Doves, Mr. Patterson may have been satisfied his memorial service paid tribute, but Toniston is far too cynical for that. And yet, whilst hundreds of people sat on the cold plastic seats in the Gumbaya Primary School auditorium, not one person in attendance truly knew Toniston when he was around. But all alone, in her large house, the animals all shunned outside, Tina Turnbull sits with her umpteenth glass of wine, ignoring the umpteenth phone call from friends, fans, and family, but most sad of all, wondering, for the umpteenth time, what she could have said to her only child to have brought the two of them closer together. A now broken photo of Trent Turnbull and an infant Toniston, only hours after his birth, sits at her feet under the table. Tina simply doesn't care about the million tiny shards of glass cutting up her feet. She just wants her son back. And as if joined at the soul, while dangling from the lavender-coloured dead coral cliff face, somewhere in his head voice, Tina's cries are heard by the boy. His face scrunches up, but then it relaxes. I can do this. Grab your copy of The Toniston Tales from thetonistonTales.com/bookstore today. Hooroo! Anyways, we're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, and I'm joined by a multiverse version of Robert Redford. It's Mr. Neil Roberts. Did you know that you are officially a multiverse version of Robert Redford, because you have both played Alexander Pierce on film? And if they're bringing back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, Hasselhoff is also Nick Fury.
I did know that he played in the movies. I was awaiting the call, and you know, in truth, you got a choice between Neil Roberts and Robert Redford. I mean, I think it's easy, really, which is why I was shocked I wasn't there. No, it's, yeah, I used to call my character Perky Pierce. When I lived in the States, I had two characters. I was either the charming ship, which I was in Charmed, or the pompous prick, which I was in Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. In fairness, in those times, I think it was a sort of thing that Americans viewed British.
Yep.
And you look at Hugh Grant at that time, you know, to a certain extent, he was either the sort of bumbling fool or the more arrogant sort of character. It's sort of how you perceived. And so, yeah, when I was in Nick Fury, I was more of the sort of comic relief. I was really proud of that. I really adored filming it. I loved the people on it. And it's always nice when they like what you're doing. The producers liked, and the director liked what I was doing so much. They wrote extra scenes for me while we were filming. I don't think I've ever been in that sort of situation before, probably since. It just really sort of, you have a warm glow knowing that you're being, you know, I need approval at the best of times. But it was really lovely to work on something like that and for them to like what I'm doing and writing extra stuff. I must admit, when it came out, there are some bits that don't work as well as I thought they would, put it that way. Well, you know, it's extraordinary. David Goyer wrote the script.
Yep.
He wrote one of the Batman movies, whichever one it is, and loads of things since. Enormous. And Fox had a 3-movie deal for this Nick Fury. And David Hasselhoff was really keen on going into something else where, in truth, you know, he had an eye patch, he smoked a cigar, he didn't shave. It was all really quite gritty. So apart from the fact it was different for him, he was doing Baywatch at the time. It wasn't just different for him, but, you know, I think I'm speaking out of turn here, but certainly for me, you get to a certain age, you do not want to be in your little red shorts every day on a beach. So I think it was a lovely opportunity to get into some other franchise where he didn't need that, where actually he was supposed to look this character who had really been through the mill. So it was a great disappointment that they only made one.
I'm halfway through it.
I saw it. I know it's on YouTube. There was a time, because the trouble is when it's not out in the theatre, so there was no DVD or VHS of it or anything. Many years ago, I saw someone selling a copy of it on, I don't know, possibly eBay or something. I found it on some site, which is probably, yeah. And I probably shouldn't be involved, having been an actor in it. it. But I said, I really would like a copy of this because I want to add it to my show reel and I don't have it. And this person sent me their dodgy copy
Oh, wonderful.
for free.
Oh, for free. Oh, there you go.
Yes.
I fancy that. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it was released in cinemas in Germany.
Oh, absolutely. David used to tell us loads of stories about the Berlin Wall, what he was doing at the time, why he was going around Germany, and why he became so big there, etc. And there was this big festival in Germany. We were in the trailer having makeup, and he was talking to his manager, and I was having my makeup done listening, and he was being offered this gig, and he was being told about the other people who were there. And he was on a phone sort of saying, wet, wet, wet. No, I don't know who wet, wet, wet are.
Oh, yeah.
And he put the phone down, turned around to me and said, apparently it's a British band, what they like. And they had the biggest selling #1 in Britain a few years before. They were so embarrassed that they'd been there for something like 18 weeks. They actually took it off sale. And so I explained this to David. There's no reason why he should know. I explained it to David, and he was immediately on the phone to his manager saying, yes, I'll do that gig with them.
Yeah, that's I remember that song. It was 4 weddings and a funeral, love is all around.
Was it? Oh, was it? Because I wondered whether it was that Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
No, that was Anything I Do, I'll Do It For You.
There you go. You know this. I think that's right. And I remember nothing.
It's like Rain Man. Goodness gracious me. Sorry.
Oh, I did Rain Man on tour a few years ago.
I know, that's why I said that joke, because it was fresh on my mind. But no, I shouldn't joke about it, though. That's terrible.
Well, no, if you are, I think, to a certain extent, we're all on the spectrum.
Yeah.
But I think it becomes an issue when it becomes an issue. So if you have a severe problem with whatever it might be, and that is because of ADHD, autism, whatever it might be, being neurodiverse in some way, if it becomes a problem, it's good to have help, whether that's medication, a diagnosis, whether it's therapy, etc., etc. But I'm still happy and my life is okay, and I can complete my life and I can deal with it positively. It's not stopping me. I've accepted it and it's okay. Then I think that's when although one shouldn't be light of it, that's when it's an issue. It's an issue. I actually bought a book on Amazon yesterday. All my apps look the same. I've just gone into the National Lottery looking for my Amazon app. Anyway, it was about ADHD and autism, and whether how you've got it, what you can do with it, how you can deal with it. This is how I coped. It's a 27-year-old, 25-year-old lady, L something, I can't remember. It's in the Times top 100 selling list of books. And so I decided to buy it. I wanted to look at it, apart from close family members, for myself too. I think it's always interesting and useful to investigate those things, because there's sometimes that gold that relates to you. Some of it may not, but some of it. I'll be frank though, I loved the first chapter. Second chapter, last night I was reading it and I thought, I'm sure I've read this. I better start it again. I read it, and because of my ADHD, I just couldn't focus. And I thought, this is the issue. I'm reading a book to help my focus. And I can't focus and take it in.
And I wrote 3 novels, and since then I haven't been able to focus on reading any novels at all, because I devoted so much time.
Busman's Holiday.
Yeah, it's like I don't know, it's like a gynecologist. At the end of the day, you just don't want to know about it, do you? But I don't know what it is. Like, I spent so much time on it, right? That now I've tried, like, I even have been reading very slowly The Wizard of Oz, which is like the most simplest book, but I like 20 pages in and I can't get any further because I just can't focus.
No, there was a book I read recently that was written recently, almost as a prequel to The Wizard of Oz. They investigated Baum or something, who wrote all of those stories.
L. Frank Baum, yep.
Yeah. So it's a person who wrote, and they investigated their life, their marriage, and the sort of history behind it all. And they created all this new book about almost factual fiction of what their perception of Frank's life would have been, the consciousness of the effect it had, even to the point that after he died, his wife was on set, and loads of things about Judy Garland and the filming of it and stuff. And, things like in the novel that I think is it Silver Shoes?
It's Silver Shoes. It's not.
And they said no, not Disney, but they said no, that doesn't work on our MGS. It doesn't work with all our filters and stuff.
Yeah.
We need it to really
pop in the color.
it was just, I just thought it was a really interesting book because you're reading it at times getting confused that this isn't a true story. It is based on some sort of truth, but is completely out of the author's mind.
Yep. Revisionist.
I read,
Yeah.
is it some Diary of a Geisha many years ago?
Right. Memoirs of a Geisha. Yeah.
That's it. And the
Sorry to correct it. Didn't need it. Memoirs, diaries are the same thing. Sorry.
the Little House on the Prairie Geisha. I mix up everything. So anyway, but the first bit of that, I don't know if you read it. The first bit is the writer saying, I went to this person's house in New York, I think it is, and was told this extraordinary story. And this is the story. And so I was reading it as if it was true. And at the end, it turned out that they had made up all the first bit, that they hadn't actually got, that it was all, even I found this person up the road who told me the story. It's all nonsense. Well, not nonsense necessarily. Some of it may have sort of happened, but it was all taken from the novelist's imagination. And I was furious at the end of the book. I thought I had been, someone had pulled the wool over my eyes. I innocently had spent hours, days, weeks reading Diary of a Memory, and the bloody thing was all made up. And I thought it was true. I thought it was someone's actual calendar of a geisha.
Look, that happens. Look, Blair Witch Project, people thought that was real. A lot of people thought the Blair Witch Project was real.
I've still not seen that film.
Oh, it's real. It's not a film. It's a documentary. It's not.
Isn't it the anniversary of it?
Yes, it is. 25th.
25 years. It came out when I was living in America, I think.
Oh, wonderful. So before we enter Baldur's Gate, I got 3 quick questions. Now, what's one thing you are hopeless at that everybody else seems to be able to do perfectly fine?
One thing that frustrates me enormously is learning lines as an actor.
Yep.
Apparently, it is part of the way my brain works that I find it really difficult. And what I find frustrating is, for years, my kids would practice lines with me and we would finish a little session. They would know the lines before me. And it happens with Diane now as well. Not just that, it takes me so long. All of my family don't just know my lines, they know every single line in the scene, and I still do not know my lines. And I cannot tell you the pain. And I know it's sort of daft, but the pain that I go through learning lines. I do many, many things. I write it out, and the visual and physical, whatever it is of writing those words, helps with the recollection. Having actions on certain words helps with recollection. Emotional engagement, understanding the emotion of it all, helps. But what really helps, it sounds mad, is there's somebody who created mind mapping. I've forgotten their name. And they came up with a way of people learning things where you have ridiculous images. And so you have to go around your room, and at different bits, you have these images that relate to your lines. So if you need to remember, let's see, that silver wing, that for me would rhyme with a bat. So I got a bat, and it would have a wing that is silver. So something daft or something erotic. For some reason, you remember those things. So therefore, when I do the scene, I wander around the rooms in my house. So someone else says everyone else's lines, and I wander around going, bat with a wing that's silver, that silver wing. And I do this, and I do it enough that initially I have these images, and you think, well, that's stupid. Surely when you're acting, you have to feel it, you have to think it. You can't just pretend, you can't do a scene, some love scene, and you're going around your sitting room with these ridiculous images. There comes a point where the images are no longer there, and the words flow. You can imagine though, you got to, I did a show called EastEnders recently. I had possibly the longest scene in EastEnders TV history. One of the scenes was 6 minutes long, pages and pages, pretty well only me talking. I turned up at the set. Absolutely everyone from the production, the makeup, the sound, they all came up to me saying, "You playing Warren Finn?" I said, "Yeah." "Oh, you got a lot of dialogue?" I said, "Yes, thank you, yes." "You're then going to have makeup done." "You playing?" "Yes." "Oh, you got a lot of dialogue?" "Yes, yes, thanks." As if I don't need winding up before I know I got a lot of bloody dialogue. Anyway, I turn up on set and the director says, "You've got a lot of dialogue." Yes. He says, no, but he then says, "This is a 6-minute scene. I mean, this is unheard of in EastEnders." And so I don't know if it is the longest scene in EastEnders, but it is practically a monologue of mine. And I spent hours and hours and hours, and it was so long, I had to go around the whole of my house, the garden, the shed, the garage with these different images, because you cannot go around the same room twice. Because you look at that wall and you can't have 15 different images there. It has to be that one image of that one line in that one scene. So anyway, it is, I know that lots of people have problems learning lines, but my immediate family, for some reason, do not. And it is pain.
Yeah. But you're absolutely right about writing it out. That's why I handwrite your introduction.
Well, that's why, yeah, you practically knew it off by heart and didn't trip up once because you'd written it out.
Exactly, and it was that memory there. I'd practiced it obviously and stuff like that, but
reading it out, yeah, really helps.
But yeah, writing it out always helps because I know the beats and what's to come, and it does help that because I do fly through them.
You do. I was shocked by the speed at which you were saying it all. I presume you did a load of vocal exercises beforehand.
No, I hum, sort of, like hum.
You need to get your teeth and lips working, and your tongue, teeth, and lips. That's what it's called. So you what is it we used to do? Rubber baby buggy bumpers. Rubber baby buggy bumpers.
Yeah, and Black Bug's Blood.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Black Bug's Blood was one. Yeah, we did that. Which in my novel I put the term Black Bug's Blood in it probably about 100 times just to trip the reader up.
So, Abby, what about "I'm not a pheasant plucker, I'm a pheasant plucker's mate"?
Yeah, I remember that one.
Say that one.
I'm not a pheasant plucker, I'm a pheasant plucker's mate.
That's it. It is a trick where you're supposed to mess up and say something inappropriate. Well done.
Speaking of international, what is the big differences in UK versus USA filming? Because we ask about stage differences all the time and people who do West End and Broadway. But what about filming? Was there...
I'm not sure about whether it is the same now. In the 90s, there are two things. You watch things like ER, there is a real pace and a lot of talking heads. And we used to watch public broadcast service, PBS, where you would have British shows and you watch them when we were there. And often they do a scene, dialogue, and then they have this pause of the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Then you would come back into the scene again they didn't have, in American TV at that time, they didn't have that pause of the landscape. And I'm saying that you see an awful lot of TV now. I'm not so familiar with the sort of network TV. Obviously, the sort of TV we get is Netflix and Amazon and Apple, etc., etc. Although there are many other streaming services that are highly recommended. But I think that they're not the same as old network TV. There is a different expanse. They only, when I said about Charmed, you do 22 episodes. There was also when network TV, you do this number of episodes in a season. Some of these things are 8 episodes, they're 10, they're 4. Sometimes they're 52 minutes. Sometimes they're an hour and 22. In the olden days, it was really prescriptive with what you had to do. So I think one thing at that time certainly was there wasn't the breath in between those scenarios. And when I used to watch British TV in America when we lived there, I absolutely loved those moments. I could sit in the moment and go, before we go into that next scene. And also, I think maybe it's sort of rose-tinted glasses. You're living in LA with the sun shining and not being able to walk anywhere. You have to drive, etc. And all of a sudden you'd see the hills of northern England. And so, there's something quite romantic about that. So that may have been part of it. When I came back, I did a pilot for a TV series called Privates. It was written by someone called amazing writer called Stephen Moffat, who wrote some of the best episodes of Doctor Who and then took over as executive producer. And I read this script and I went to meet Stephen and I said, what I always felt the difference between American TV and British TV was American TV was much more on the front foot. There was this, and in British TV, you're allowed to sort of sit back and there's a different energy to it. This script by Stephen was very much on the front foot, which is why I mention it. And I had read Ally McBeal for the pilot and gone up for it. And I said to him, this is the best script apart from the fact I was trying to flatter him, but genuinely, I said it's the best script I've read since I read Ally McBeal. The style of it really reminded me of that, the wit, etc. But it was really on the front foot. So a big difference I feel is, at that time, American TV much more on the front foot. A few years ago, I did something called Whiskey Cavalier, and although it was filmed in Prague, it was for ABC, American network. And again, actually, there was on the front foot an energy, even the sarcasticness, the wit and stuff is very different from the British and the sitcoms, particularly. What I learned in America, when I first arrived, within the first week, I had an audition for Fraser, British character. Met the casting director, liked me. Next day, went to meet all the producers for this nice guest role in one of the episodes, playing a British character. I didn't understand. I was very much in British sitcom. It genuinely is on the back foot and almost quite dry. And I didn't get the role. I then saw the episode and there was an American playing it. And there were a few things. The accent wasn't great, but it didn't matter because what they understood was they understood the energy within a sitcom. The other thing they understood was they understood what the Americans were laughing at in the Britishness. I didn't understand it because I'm British. So this is just me. Why are you laughing? It took me a while of being there before I understood how to do those things. Their sitcoms is very much like our theatre and our farce. In the olden days, when you'd have the audience, as opposed to nowadays, lots of those Apple things, Ted Lasso, it's all single camera, you're not in front of an audience. In those days, you have several cameras, you'd have a big audience. It was like performing to a theatre. It's really up front. And for TV and camera work, even sitcoms in Britain at that time didn't do that. And I love the fact that they have now gone into this mode of single camera the majority of the time. And so you are playing the truth and the drama, and you hope that the comedy will work. Comedies at that time, Fraser, Friends, all of those things, Seinfeld, I think are the best comedy ever written. And there's something about that style that suited it. But having said that, at that time, they were making hundreds and hundreds of comedies, and a huge amount of them didn't work. And they were all in that same style. For some reason, the ones that did work were extraordinary. But as I said, it was like proscenium arch farce theatre. And I find the fact that you mix that with a camera took me many, many months to understand.
I do love the 1-2 punch sitcoms, and I miss that. The ones we get.
There's always this beat, isn't there? Da-da-da-da-boom.
Yeah.
I always struggled with that, though, because you knew this was supposed to be funny. And there were times when you just thought, they're expecting me to make this funny. It's just not funny. So what? You just do the rhythm. Da-da-da-ba. I'm always very uncomfortable with that sort of 1, 2, 3, bosh. I much prefer things innately just allowed out and you have a bit of freestyle with it within comedy. Anyway.
Now, what has been the most satisfied you felt leaving a role, like you left it all on the table?
Wow.
That's my favorite response to any question on this show, is when it goes, wow. Well, good question. And I know it's genuine. Like, I know you're all actors. I can tell when you're bullshitting now. That was a genuine wow.
Well, you know, when people have interviews and they say, oh, yes, no, we got on so well on this set. It was an absolute privilege. This is wonderful. And you think, well, apparently everything you do is wonderful. And I know that's not true from my experience.
No, I know it's not true. I see through it.
Well, you know what, though? There's two different things, because sometimes there's things like Nick Fury, as an example, where I mentioned earlier. It feels good when you are being approved of, when what you are doing seems to work in everyone's eyes, works so well you are then being written scenes for, in what felt like a very big project. So there was a huge satisfaction at the end of that. But this is the but. Once it aired, it wasn't quite what I hoped for, in two reasons. I saw some of the rushes every day, or what you see is the camera on you, and all those moves, and you think, and I don't very often say, to be honest, most of the time I think I'm rubbish and self-conscious, and I can see through it whatever I'm delivering, and I think I'm terrible. There are other things where I think, oh, I think I'm, and I just feel as if I'm getting away with it. There are other things where I genuinely think, oh, I feel this is quite a good performance. And I was watching these rushes and I was feeling that. Of course, then in an edit, there's other people on the screen. So although that camera was on you for 3 minutes doing these lovely expressions, 90% of the screen is obviously, understandably, on the money, which is on David Hasselhoff. And then there's his other...
And Lisa Rinna.
Yeah.
And Lisa Rinna.
Lisa's, yes. Anyway, what I wanted to say was there's all these other people that the camera goes on. And you, therefore, are... A lot of the time when you deliver your line, it may be on you. But all those little nuances, all those little moments aren't actually used. On top of which, Nick Fury, as a whole, I don't think worked as well as it could have done. So although I said, I was so happy during this filming and afterwards, etc. It doesn't quite reach the heights of what you hoped for. And I wonder whether there's even more disappointment because you've fallen from such a great height. There are other things I did a few years ago, about 10 years ago, I did a short film. And I'd done an awful lot of commercial things, which everyone was lovely and I enjoyed and it was brilliant and all the other nonsense. But this was an unpaid thing we did over the course of a week or two. Very emotional, very dense with the subject matter. And it was really special to make. I wonder whether there's an investment also from everybody because it's more of a love project because you're not getting paid, etc. But the end result is absolutely stunningly beautiful too and has won lots of awards. And so with that, there is the sense of while you're doing it, it feels good, and actually the result is good, and you're proud of it. And so everything has come together. And I still use parts of that on my showreel and stuff. I think it's really special. And you're proud of it. So there's these different things. In the same way, I mean, I have done stage plays where I thought I've given my best performance in this, but because it as a whole doesn't quite work, isn't that great, you come out of it okay. But I have equally done things where I've only thought I've been okay in it. And because for some reason the whole is brilliant, the accolades and the plaudits, etc. And you think, this is one, I was much better in the other show the other day. And I'm not, it's just really weird. So ideally, it is, as I think, that short film, which is called The History of Chance. There are certain things like that. I did a play, which is The End of the Affair, which was a tour around. It was just a small tour, went down well, but not big West End National Theatre stuff. But again, maybe because of the simplicity of the set, etc. And it was written by Graham Greene from the novel. And it's beautiful. And I sometimes wonder what really fulfills me is when you have, you can really emotionally involve yourself in something. So I think there's a few things. One is you need a decent enough part to really get your teeth into it. And I think the other thing is that you have some sort of the character is written and it's written well so that you have some emotional journey. And maybe those other things that happen to come together that are almost less secure than that in that, lots of people make films. And if everyone knew those ingredients, you'd have a great hit every time. A bit like Baldur's Gate, that you're working on Baldur's Gate on your own in a studio with mocap, etc. and doing the voice. But you don't really know the whole. Yet there's all this other stuff and it happens to all come together. There's other stuff that I've done in games. So I thought, God, I'm brilliant in this. I can't wait to see it. And because some other things don't quite work,
Gollum.
I wouldn't like to say
Gollum.
what, but things don't work as a whole.
Everyone's thinking it. Everyone is thinking that was a Travis. Like that should have been a fun game that we all got to experience at Middle Earth and run around. And it was just.
Now, I don't know a lot about when things don't go down well, etc., and what fans' views are. All I knew of that was Lord of the Rings, books, films, phenomenal. Probably the majority of games. So you just think, I'm playing an elf, Gwendol, I think it was, in Lord of the Rings Gollum. My God, what that is. I'm going to be a bit like you say, Nick Fury, I'm part of the whatever world. I'm part of the world of Lord of the Rings, yes. And from my understanding, the production company apologized to the fans, and I don't know if it's them, something about we'll never make games again, but it is so disappointing when you have in fairness, everyone has the hopes. They didn't try and make something that wasn't very good. Everyone hoped it would be brilliant. So it's very disappointing.
Exactly. No one sets out to make a bad movie. No one.
You presume.
No, well, yeah, we presume. There is the producers, which is actually about that. And that's the thing we come to all the time with critiquing things, because we know that people didn't set out to write a bad album or a bad musical. Sometimes things don't come together, but sometimes something fails in the past that becomes a cult hit over time. And look at Merrily, we roll along.
Well, sure, It's a Wonderful Life, which apparently didn't take off for many, many years.
The Wizard of Oz bombed.
Yeah.
The Wizard of Oz flopped at the cinema. But obviously what isn't a flop is Baldur's Gate 3. So before we unlock the Dark Urge, we're going to take a quick ad break. We'll be back after this. G'day listeners, because we've got a huge show today, I thought I'll do all the TNT plugs here before we unlock Baldur's Gate 3 and give you guys a chance to top up your coffees So firstly, buy the Tonniston Tales and read the Tonniston Tales. You can find the link below. I wrote them. They're awesome books, but then again, I would say that. Secondly, you can find Mr. J-Wags currently as assistant musical director and songwriter at Second City in New York City, which I think it's the third city by now. I don't know. It might be the first. I can't remember. He did explain it to me. Either way, Matt, you can find in Heart of a Man, which is currently opening here and there in cinemas in Australia, and he's also performing in Pirates of Penzance coming up. So check his socials for details on Pirates and Heart of the Man. Now, Spencer has his debut producing concert at 54 Below, which is called 54 Below Does Wolfpack. I have no idea, but he knows all about them, so he's producing a show, and chookers to him for that. Also, our hosts for Around the World in 80 Plays, Lizzie B and Alfie Parker, are currently performing in Sister Act. Lizzie you can find in the West End, starring opposite Beverly Knight and Leslie Joseph, and Alfie you can find on tour around the UK, as well as our extra special guest and extra special guest co-host, Asabi Goodman, who you can currently see as Matron Mama Morton in Chicago, the musical, now playing at Her Majesty's Theatre in Melbourne, before moving on to Canberra, Adelaide, and Sydney. Anyways, that's it for now. Back to the episode. Alrighty, you're listening to Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, and this week we've caught Neil Roberts in the act because we are going to have a little bit of a deep dive into his character, the Dark Urge, from the massive video game Baldur's Gate 3. So, firstly, what is it about this game that has been so incredibly massive over the past year or so?
When I've done TV and film, often you deal with your character Charmed as an example. I've then been some years later to conventions and big fans of Charmed, and they know the material and the product so well, and they can say things such as, now, Neil, when you said diddly diddly in that scene in episode 4, 14 minutes in, and then you did a little look to the right, what did that mean?
Oh, I hate those questions.
And so, half the time, as an actor, when you've done these things, you then move on to the next job.
I know.
There is apparent a beauty to lots of these shows. And I think, we've discussed it before about Charmed, where it's 3 women with special powers, and together collectively in their friendship group, they're particularly powerful. And I think those sorts of things and those stories resonate with a huge amount of people. Same way as my other half when she did Wicked in the West End. But it's a lot about bullying. It's a lot about the underdog winning, but it's 2 female characters who are really, really powerful. And I think it resonates with a huge amount of the population seeing those sort of characters up there on screen or on stage, and they relate it to their own feelings, potentially their own bullying, etc., etc. And I think that what's fascinating about Baldur's Gate 3, very similarly, the fan base that I have talked to, either online or at conventions, it has changed their lives in many ways. And I'm just a small sort of cog within the whole. I voiced and mocapped a particular character, but there's something like 250 actors doing the voices in this thing. And although what I did was quite a fair bit of recording and a large part of the storytelling and the characters, you are still this minutiae. I think it's a tiny part of what the audience get from it. There's something quite beautiful about the world that's created within Baldur's Gate. There's a few things from my understanding. One is that it's all very fluid, the gender, the sexuality, the relationships between characters, the fact that you can create your own character, have sort of traditional female or male forms, but have traditional male voices that sort of go against that, if that's the right way of putting it. And I think all of that is really exciting and wonderful, that you can do that within a game, and you can have conversations with pretty well everyone in that world. You can go up to some non-player character and talk to them about life in the village, like you would if you're in your own town and you meet someone in the street and you start talking to them. They have a world, a life, an experience of decades. And that's what the developers have tried to create within this. So it has really resonated with people. And as I say, in a way, to a certain extent, I don't necessarily understand, because I don't know the whole world. All I know is how powerful it has been. And I think some of the popularity is around those different options. Some of it is the expanse in the world and the creativity. There's an awful lot of strategy in it and choices to be made. There's also an awful lot of just sitting back and watching and looking. And I think there's a lot of games where you're just on the front foot and you try and mow everyone down and you get from A to B as quick as you can. Whereas this is a slow progress. And the reason I'm hesitant is to sort of explain exactly what people get from it, or even my understanding of the whole game, is I haven't been able to play it, in part because I'm not very good at it. And secondly, I haven't had a computer powerful enough. So anyway, tomorrow I start streaming, playing as my character, the Dark Urge, within this game. And because I'm streaming, I'm going to have people who understand the game helping me, chatting to me, explaining what I could do, what I should do, even things, turn left, turn right, roll your dice, have a chat with this person. No, kill them, don't kill them.
Now, this character, the Dark Urge, I don't know too much about him or about the video games, because as we had discussed, it's not really my type of game, but I've never played it. So who is the character on the offset?
There are half a dozen origin characters. One of them is his character called the Dark Urge. It is customizable. You can create all sorts of images, and then you create whether you want to be, from my understanding, a warlock, a barbarian. And even the choices you make at the start of this game influence the whole story. And people sometimes play this for 500 hours. There's 3 acts to it. And what you do, and what I find staggering, is that you, even at the start, you decide on these things, and it will, the way that you go through the game will be completely different as a result of that and your sort of initial choices. So the Dark Urge is quite unusual in that it turns out that the Dark Urge is created from the flesh of this character Baal, and the idea is that you can either resist the urge. The Dark Urge is almost woken up with no memory, except they have this urge of wanting to kill everything, but they're quite sensitive to it. It's almost as if I don't want to, but I can't help it. And there are 2 ways to go, where you can either resist as much as you can, and apparently that takes down a different sort of storyline, or you can not resist. And the person who wrote it, Baudelaire Welsh, they said that the fun of this is you have that choice. And I think that a lot of it's obviously escapism anyway, but you can throw yourself into that urge and destroy everything and have fun doing that. I quite like it. Bo uses the word fun. You can have fun by killing everything in this game. Or you can resist that urge. So tomorrow night, I'm really going to get a feel as to where this is going. But what is fascinating is obviously I had to voice many elements of this character. So there's a lot of discussion with the director when you do the voice work. The director has had discussions with Larian, who have created it all, and with the writers. And we all have an idea, because I worked on this for over 4 years voicing it. So you have an idea as to the game, even though I've explained that I don't necessarily understand it completely. But I think with anything, TV, film, etc., it's always from your character's point of view. You don't necessarily have to know what everyone else is doing or thinking. You just have to make choices about yourself. And so when you're in that mode, what I found interesting about gaming is you are being told where you are, what the environment is, and you try and lap up as much detail as possible so that you can make choices, but so that you can be true and real to your interpretation of that character. But ultimately, it's not like being on set of something and seeing the world around you. You are making it up, and you're not even seeing drawings and images, etc. It's all through verbal communication. There was a point where they brought out a beta version of the game in early access. So we were recording for a couple of years, 2-3 years before that point, and then we saw some of the world that the players were accessing. And I must admit, what was in my head and what was there was not necessarily the same thing. It didn't necessarily matter at the end of the day because they all match up. And to be fair, if what we recorded was way off the mark, they didn't like, or they thought they could do differently or better, or we could do differently or better, they got us in to record more. And if you are filming, you can't necessarily, you're in, I don't know, in Indonesia filming whatever, and then a couple of months later, they're looking at the rushes, they're editing it. No, we don't like this. We prefer to do this. They don't necessarily have the funds to then go and do it. But the beauty of this is, a bit like cartoons too, is that you can develop it and change it as you go along. There aren't the same costs involved. And the developers of Baldur's Gate 3 always, in my mind, wanted it to be the best it can be. It was all driven by how can we do this brilliantly for the game and for the audience, not necessarily, well, that didn't quite work, we can't be bothered, or we don't have the extra, few £100 to change it. Let's just forget it and move on. They were staggering. The other thing about this game is I've done quite a few games now. Often everything is created and the actors are brought in to voice things at the end. The difference of this is we were voicing it whilst they were developing it, and therefore they took often what the actors were giving, and they were thinking, oh, well, that's rather fun, actually. That really works for this character. We're going to go into that much more, whatever it might be, the more cynical thing or the more whatever I might bring to it. And rarely has that ever happened. And so with this, it really developed. They saw what the actors were bringing to it, and they amended and changed characters as a result. I don't think I've been a part of anything where they developed it in that way. But I never really saw the end results, though, until we got a publicity pack last summer. And I didn't realize the detail of the worlds. And what I said before was every little character you could meet in the village, you can have a discussion with. I wasn't aware of all of those things. There's no need for me, being an actor in this, the part that I was doing, there's no need for you to know all of that. But it was quite staggering when I got this through. And the animation and the graphics and all of it and the story, the care that was being told, the care that they took in telling it all. And I'm not sure if I think all of those things are why it has gone down so brilliantly. It has won Game of the Year at every single awards ceremony. And I wasn't even aware before that the BAFTAs had its own gaming category. It's a whole world that has been opened up to me. A whole world where the time, energy, etc. It's almost like movies now. The amount of effort, possibly money and time, etc. they put into it is huge. And the care. And the actors that I was working with, many of them purely focus on games and do motion capture and voicing games. It is a whole technical world that I've now been introduced to. And I love it an awful lot. I think I've always loved games, but never quite understood what goes into it. So this has opened my eyes up to it. But also the community of gaming. They have a real passion and a love for it. To spend 500 hours on a game, Baldur's Gate, I just think is staggering. And I do understand it because many years ago, I used to spend hours and hours on games, just little silly games that weren't this rich and complicated. So I do get it, but it has changed my outlook. It is very exciting to be a part of something that is so phenomenally successful. And as I said, I'm streaming tomorrow, which I've never done before, playing the game, because I genuinely want to see what it is that people are so enthralled with and so excited by.
I know one thing that people are enthralled by is there's no DLC.
Absolutely. It is amazing. There are very few games that you buy, you don't spend a fortune on an add-on. The fact that it is so in-depth and rich, and then they do keep adding things to it that you don't have to pay for. You're absolutely right. I think that's another thing, though, that people feel that the Larian who created this care. It's not just a money grabbing or money making machine. There's something about doing things like little things, or maybe seem like little things like that, show a care and love of the project, of what they have created, that they're proud of it, and of their genuine love of the community, that they're not just trying to get more money out of them.
Yeah. So I bought a game, I think December, had been like $100 something, Planet Coaster, and I brought the full thing with all the DLC for $12 because I waited 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. And since December, I've played it for 1,342 minutes. No, hang on, not minutes, hours. 1,342 hours.
Wow. And it cost you $12.
Yeah.
Brilliant. What a bargain.
So I'm cheap,
You are.
and I refuse to pay full price for a bloody game like that. I mean this with all respect. None of that tells me who the character is, though.
It's probably because I can't remember what the character is. You know, you recorded for I started summer of 2019. God knows what we're doing. But I did tell you a little bit. The Dark Urge
Created from the flesh
is,
of a
well, in
character.
fairness, the beauty of the Dark Urge is the Dark Urge doesn't know who they are. They have this monologue introducing themselves at the start of the game, which I voice. And the Dark Urge, I can remember nothing, so I can't remember the words they speak, but they are something like, I cannot remember who I am or where I come from. But it's something like, all I remember is I've got this urge, and this twitching knife hand wants to write a tragedy and blood. And they're trying to fight against that. And the character's quite lost. The character's quite, I guess, animalistic. But it's almost, in my mind, like a child in this grown-up body that doesn't quite know what they are yet, or why they've got these impulses. And I think there's an awful lot of what's within the game. A lot of people who are neurodiverse enjoy playing it because of things like that. And I've explained to you before that I've got ADHD, and so it does resonate with me that there are these urges and these impulses. The character doesn't know where they come from. They try to resist them. Sometimes they can't resist, and they cut an arm off or something. Sometimes they really try to resist. So it's almost like my daily life, but not in quite that severity, or that dangerous and dark world. There is one YouTube video that's had over 2 million views, where there's this comment of someone who uploaded it, said, this actor deserves a pay rise. So I did send it to my agent, and my agent has been negotiating as a result with studios saying, look, everyone says he deserves a pay rise.
So exactly, it's a superstar breakout character. He very much is. Now, obviously, not knowing anything about him or about the world. So where do you start with?
I thought you were telling me that obviously, Neil, you know nothing about this character or this world, which is true.
So where do you start inhabiting that sort of character? Because motion capture is obviously dots on your body and all the weird things. Like, what was that suit like as well?
The suit is this tight Lycra. You imagine Velcro. It's the fluffy part of Velcro, so that the balls, which have the sort of spiky bits of Velcro, can attach to any part of you. But there's an awful lot of actors, when they act, they get their character by their makeup, by the shoes they wear, by the outfit they've got on. Yeah, ultimately, it's all about acting and pretending, isn't it? When we're children, or you see children playing, they can be whatever character they are and world they inhabit purely by their thoughts. And so this really is the real bottom line, the basis of acting, when you are dressed in that outfit and you have to imagine you are something else. Now, the thing about my characters, my voice was always used, and the motion capture, they're customizable characters. So although if you see that monologue, it is as a white dragonborn. The thing is that the majority of the time, your voice doesn't have to match a certain body type. So although you do actions, etc., that relate to what you are looking at, you are not always the face of this white dragonborn, as an example. If you were, you might be able to, you would think those things and you'd adopt it. It was one thing that we did, because there's other characters where you can create completely your custom and use my voice for it. And so what was important, we had an essence of rogue. I had an essence of rogue. Each actor was given these different essences. And you couldn't be definite about physically how you looked, but you could be definite in the world you were. So what I was saying before is that your mind, although you didn't think you were a white dragonborn all the time, you knew where your world was. You knew what you were doing, what the room looked like, whether you were being tentative, whether you were being on the front foot and forceful. So you knew those sorts of things. But for me, I had to understand all of that. I asked a lot of questions where I was in this world. And I don't know whether everyone approaches it in that way, whether some people just do the voice and throw it out there and it's perfect. But for me to really understand, or for me to feel as if I was involved and could give something that I felt worked, was to have as much detail as possible. And you weren't given the whole script necessarily. You were given little bits of where the world was. And the director had to do all of that homework and liaise with the production company and then pass that on to me. And if I didn't understand it, sometimes they would then call up or ping off an email and immediately try and get an answer from someone so that we did have more knowledge to be able to make those choices. So I think it was slightly different, the sort of thing that I was doing in that world. There are some characters, Neil Newbon plays Astarion, always as Astarion and always looks like that character. And so they had different information that they could deal with. You say, I did motion capture for pretty well all of it, but I have no idea ultimately whose motion capture they used. I know that there was some motion capture, some of the sort of love scenes. They had just a couple of actors and they did that in a different studio. And from my understanding, those actors, whoever's having a love scene, they would always use that motion capture. But I don't ultimately know what they chose. I could say, oh, my motion capture was brilliant. They used it for everything, but they probably didn't. But half the lines I've never even heard. I've told you before that when you do TV and film, you can buy the DVD, watch it on Netflix, BBC, you can fast forward, slow it down for you, all of those things. For this, the only way of me hearing myself is playing the damn game. So it will be, I've heard some stuff on YouTube and on social media, and I've been listening going, is that me? That is me. I don't remember saying that line. Did I really say that line? And of course, it was in 2019, some rainy afternoon on a Wednesday in Croydon. And why would I remember saying that line?
I wrote novels and I will read them back now and think, did I write that? Oh my God. Because it's been 4 or 5 years since I've read them. So yeah, I get it.
Well, that's what I mean at conventions, when you got people who watch shows, Charmed, time and time again, play these games time and time again. Mm-hmm. People send me messages, oh, I love it when you say diddly diddly. And I go, oh, I had no recollection of saying that.
Goodness me. But I know what you mean by the fans asking those questions. Remember I told you I sat behind David Hasselhoff? Did I tell you that? I sat behind Hasselhoff while he was signing autographs because I was there with my friend.
Right. I don't know.
That was the same deal of the fans would ask him questions like that. And I was sitting there, my eye was twitching the whole time because it was so uncomfortable. I'm so mean.
It was David lovely.
He was absolutely adorable with them. He really was. He was so attentive.
I like David a lot.
Yeah, he was. And he was sweet to us too. Barbara Eden was there. Like, I got to meet Adrian Regini.
Oh, really?
Barbara freaking Eden.
Wow.
Oh my God, fathers. She was tiny. Okay. Did you base the portrayal on anything, anyone, any sort of, because I feel there's a bit of a Shakespearean vibe to him.
In that monologue, certainly people have said that. What's funny is most of the time when we record, you do a line or two at a time. And so that monologue we did 2 different versions. I can't remember which one they used. I think it was a slightly shorter one, but there were lines and reams of it. And so I was saying to them, do you want me a line at a time? They said, yeah, you can do that if you want, Neil. But I thought, how is it going to be used? They said, oh, it's going to be used as a monologue. So I said, oh, I'm going to do it all in one then, because you need that flow. It's no good doing a line 3 times. And anyway, and it was really refreshing and rather lovely that there was however meaty all the rest of it and beautifully written it is, the fact that you were delivering just tiny sections at a time and then having a chat in between, you really want to get involved. So I was really thrilled to do a nice monologue where you could really sort of involve yourself. I didn't base any of it on anyone else. I'm not sure if I ever do. I have auditioned many times for not impersonations, for plays and TV stuff where they're based on real people, and certainly celebrities where there's a recognizable voice and stuff. I just don't have that control and ability. I don't have the technical flexibility to be able to do it. I've never gone down that route of thinking of someone else. What I always do is find an element of me, and I think it's the only way of being truthful. We are made up of so many facets, and I've always loved acting since I was little, predominantly because it's almost my therapy. I use it as a way of sourcing different parts of myself, of understanding different parts of myself. So there's something quite thrilling almost in relishing, letting that part of you out and relishing that within a character. And to a certain extent, I think, playing games or watching films, etc., it's all about escapism. It's all about a safe place to allow that part of you to flourish. And if you play as this dark urge character, it is an opportunity to throw yourself, to just access that part of you, to have fun, as Bo the writer said. So I think as an actor, for me, I want to access that part of myself. If there's something, the character that's had a lot of loss, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, I access that part of Neil that has had all of that. I think it's the only way for me to be able to play any character, and therefore there's a genuine part of Neil within this, and hopefully there's an honesty there with whatever I do. And I think when you do that, it then makes a character accessible. So I never do something external. Having the outfit and having the makeup of certain things can all help. You look in the mirror, you have the thoughts, you visually see all of that, it can help. But ultimately, it's all about inside. It's about accessing those thoughts and accessing those emotions. And then, of course, being able to sit in those and play them, not necessarily show them, but you play them all so that they appear and come across. So that's invariably how I work. So that's what I did with this, just trying to understand. And as I said, it's a really complicated character. It's not just a matter of, it's not a two-dimensional character who just goes out and maims everyone. Everything is much more complicated than that. There is an essence of trying to avoid it, of being confused by it, of not understanding it, of being lost by it, of relishing it maybe, but then having doubt. How did this happen? There's sort of this blackout, and all of a sudden there's the whole camp is murdered. How did that happen? So I think there has to also be a vulnerability. To be frank, Neil's natural world is quite confused and confusing. I understand very little. And so I think the dark urge is very much like that. And most of the characters I get, even if they're charming shits or pompous pricks, there's invariably some other side of it. So even with that charming character who's really nasty, there's always a vulnerability under there. Is it trying to hide? The bravado is hiding a fear and anxiety. And then you have that other thing of being rather daft and pompous, but ultimately that's probably again a show of trying to hide behind that comedic element. So that's what I always try and attach myself to.
Yeah. And that actually answers the next question. What pieces of yourself have you injected into the character, for lack of a better term?
I've injected all of myself into the dark urge.
Anyways, I've kept Neil for far too long, so you can find him on the socials at the Nearly Roberts or the Neil Roberts. I'll put all the links below in the details. Huge thank you for joining me, Neil. It was an absolute joy to explore your career and your process and all that jazz. And of course, thank you so much to Diane for helping me set up the interview, for coming on my show, and for coming on Around the World in 80 Plays as well. It has been pure joy. You can find us at Thrash and Treasure or at Thrash and Treasure Podcast. I did all the plugs before, so make sure you go out, you buy Baldur's Gate 3, you take care of yourselves, look after each other. Thank you for listening, and we shall see you next time. Like quicksand!